Can I share something with you? Before the pandemic, I was living in the rhythm that so many of us fall into. Let me tell you what that rhythm was. It was the rhythm of doing what was expected of me, right? And I had that down pat, right? Literally down pat, right? I kept the peace. I was dutiful, and let me do that in quotations. I was dutiful to institutions. I checked all the boxes, right? And maybe you can relate to that because I did that for so long. Oftentimes, I didn't even really know who I was anymore. And on the surface, it worked. Literally, it worked. But underneath, let me tell you what was going on the inside of me. I was quietly unraveling, right? And I felt that I was no longer truly satisfying who? Me. Does this make sense? I was trying to be the best, by saying the right things around certain people so as not to offend them. We always want to make sure that we don't offend people. We're in a no offend culture now, but it was at the expense of what? My peace. Can I just say that again? My peace. So I started to realize that so many of my choices, like how I worked, how I attended church, because that was a big part of my life, how I saw myself was built on beliefs, right, that someone else gave me. They literally handed these beliefs to me, right? And I accepted them. Yes, I just accepted them as my own because they were reinforced in me by my parents, right? When you're growing up, whose beliefs do you get but your parents, right? Maybe some of my friends, and especially my faith community, because that's where a large part of my life was spent. And I was so obedient to accept these beliefs without question. I was told this is how it is, and Janice said, okay. And these beliefs may have been very well intentioned. I will say that. But they were no longer aligned with who I was becoming. And who I am becoming in this space and time is important. And that's the key point that I want to make here. I was becoming and allowing myself to be afraid to learn new things, right? So maybe this is where you are in life right now. Maybe you are afraid to learn new things. That's why I'm here. I'm Janice Thorne, certified life coach with the A New Practice. And I am board certified as a metaphysician at the board of, or shall I say, with the board of metaphysics. So I want to say to you, welcome to Flourish with Janice. Thank you for tuning in to my channel. So today, I want to talk about the process that I chose to deprogram. And that involved me asking a whole lot of questions. Questions like, where did this belief come from? Do I still believe it? Who am I if I let it go? Because a lot of our beliefs, define our identity. And the most important question is, can other beliefs be true at the same time, right? We never ask ourselves, can this be true and this be true? That's a big one. And that's when my journey of unlearning began, because, we learn, but sometimes we got to unlearn too. We got to shake off some things that we've learned, and we got to say yes to it, yes to unlearning. And I believe that was what guided me into a space, that required me to just be deeply considerate about a lot of different things, right? And not from a place of fear, but from a place of curiosity, right? It was me intentionally living. And I believe that's so important, because intentional living is important because it's a part of what makes you authentic. And intentional living literally is a part of my Flourish framework. So in the process, towards my journey of deprogramming, I had to put myself at a crossroad, right? I had found myself at a crossroad where I had to start unlearning some things, not because they were bad, but because I needed to examine them a little bit, greater. So just to let you know, deprogramming, it isn't about dishonoring where you've come from. I didn't dishonor where I came from. It's about honoring who you are right now in this moment, right? We have to do that. We can't, sometimes what we've learned 10 years ago doesn't apply for right now, So what do? It's about washing the beliefs and those expectations and those inherited rules that keep you from hearing your own truth. You have a truth too. And it's looking at what's been shaping your thoughts, right? Your thoughts about culture, your thoughts about family, about religion, maybe even about society. And then asking yourself, is this still true for me? Because so many of us don't ask these important questions. Just as simple, is it still true for me? Why? Because most people are afraid of releasing old truths. Those old truths that grandmama gave you, that no longer even sound true. We sometimes our grandmama gave us some truths that didn't even sound right. And that's how it showed up for me in my life. I had to ask myself, does this even make sense anymore? Right? And why am I still holding on to this? Right? It really, truly meant me confronting some deep church-based programming, because that's where a lot of my beliefs came from. That's where I was really kind of like out there, because I had ideas about worthiness, about sacrifice, right? I had beliefs that, okay, if I live this way, if I did right, God's going to love me. But if I did life contrary, God would reject me. That's what I was taught. Now, to me, that's conditional. I'm only going to love you if you do what I say. But yet, I was taught God is so unconditional. So there's an imbalance right there for me. How can you be conditional and unconditional at the same time? So when I began letting go of a lot of those beliefs, let me tell you what happened. Something powerful. I felt freer, more open, more me, more Janice, and more excited about a whole new way of life that was, guess what? Opening up for me in the process. That's what I did for Janice. And this is where rewriting your rules or the approaches to your life, that's where it starts. It's the foundational aspect of deprogramming yourself from outdated beliefs that no longer serve you. And you can think about it. What beliefs no longer serve you? And when you start asking those kinds of questions, let me tell you what happens. You begin to step into a beautiful blank space where you get to scribe what you want to be in that space. And it's a space where you get to rewrite your own rules or your own approaches to life. And these are the things that you've decided, not somebody else, not someone else's handing you these beliefs and saying, follow them. This is where you get to define your success, your peace, and your purpose. On whose terms? Your terms, right? You're no longer chasing after approval. You're no longer living for performance. A lot of us, we are performance based, right? You're no longer holding on to the shoulds that, they really keep you small. Should I've done this? Should I've done that? And I know I do that sometimes. But I am rewriting those scripts. And in my own rewriting of those rules, it's meant that freedom doesn't have to mean rebellion. I'm not rebelling against anything or anybody. It means alignment for me. And it's been the doorway of amazing growth for me. I feel it, I walk in it, I know it, and I allow it for myself. And it can happen for you too if you feel that you've been living off of stale patterns, right? Stale programs that no longer fit this space that you're currently operating in. You always have to examine your life and say, where am I? What am I operating in? How does it feel? Does this even fit me anymore? So if you want to go deeper, know that I've done the work to peel off those old rules and those old patterns. And I've allowed myself to rewrite my new rules, my new approaches for my life that now serve me better and which give me more authentic peace, more authentic freedom, more authentic space to be who I am. And in the process of doing that, you know what I did? I created the Liberated Life Workbook, which gives an account of worked for me to get here. So here in this space of freedom, I can say I am liberated. And I want to give others the space and the tools to begin this same journey. So I want you to be able to ask those hard questions. I want you to be able to unlearn those old rules and those old approaches and rebuild a life that feels true to who you really are. Don't you want that for your life? That's what I wanted for my life, and now I can stand in that space. So if you want to know how I applied this into my own life and what worked for me, you need my workbook. And I can say that it literally changed my life. And now a lot of people, when they talk about workbook, I want you to know it's more than a workbook, okay? Because that sounds kind of, it sounds kind of like, okay, it's a workbook. No, it's a sacred space where you get to hear your own voice again. And that's an important step to deprogram from what others have given you, right? And again, this is not rebellion. This is alignment. So if you've been feeling the pull to slow down, to question, and finally live life on your terms, this is your invitation to be set free and rewrite the rules that you want to live by. So, you know what I want you to do? Click on the link below to get your Liberated Life Workbook and start your journey today that leads to a new way of life that mirrors who you really are. You will not be disappointed. And if you feel compelled to be part of a community for women that share the same values, that share the same sentiments and the desires to deprogram, I want you to join and register for my Flourish Circle. The link is below. Sign up today, and don't forget to subscribe and comment if this video resonates with you. I want to hear from you.